Okay, can we sit down so we can get started? Okay, I will call the Facilities Committee of the whole meeting to order this Monday, March 31st at 7:41 p.m. Next item on the agenda is the consideration of the January 27th, 2025 meeting minutes, which you had in the packet. Any additions and/or corrections? Hearing none, I would seek a motion. Jay moves approval. Second by Dr. Hodak. Any further? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Manley.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Oops, sorry. Hodak.
Yes.
Clevin.
Yes.
Larson.
Yes.
Palmesino.
Yes.
Flynn.
Yes.
Lund.
Yes.
Berger.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. Item 3 on the agenda is the building fund and projects updates. I'll turn this over to Brandon.
Thank you, members of the committee. The last few times the committee has met, at least the last twice, we've gone on tours. It's been kind of fun and exciting. This won't be the case tonight. We'll just talk through some budgets on these projects. Both myself and Jonathan will kind of tag team this. Just have a few slides put together to take us through our leading projects just recently, and then also talk about the building fund and just where how that fund has been working for us. So the first project we want to talk about, we're going to feature our 3 referendum projects and then also cover the Career Impact Academy before talking about the building fund balance. So the first of the referendum-related projects would be our Central Kitchen project. As a reminder, this is moving the Central Kitchen location from the current Valley Middle School out to Mark Sanford Education Center. And this one we have a lot of firm information on because the project has reached substantial completion. There'll still be some site work to be done yet this spring after the snow is completely melted off and some landscaping's done. But what we tried to do across all these projects was replicate the same format. So it's pretty easy here to follow for the presentation tonight. It starts with the budget, or how much we allocated. From the $79 million, we allocated $6 million for the Central Kitchen relocation project. The actuals through that substantial completion date would be, firstly, the construction amount itself at $4.8 million. And then the soft costs, which normally fall into these 2 buckets, the design costs or the architect's contract amount of $174,000, and then the owner costs, or sometimes FF&E and other things related can fall in there, of $149,000. In total, that brought the project to just over $5.1 million on a $6 million budget. That's the right side of where we want to be. And due to the good work of all the contractors and Jonathan keeping eyes on it all, we're under budget, $863,000 on that, or almost 15% under budget. So that's my part of the role, is I get to run through the numbers quickly. You can read, and I get to be redundant and do that. But Jonathan can talk through a little bit of how the project went, and then, of course, we'll both answer any questions on that project.
Thank you, Brandon. The project went very well. We had some great partners in construction engineers and their kitchen design partner. We worked directly with Child Nutrition to make sure that all of their needs were being met and that they ended up with a better space than they currently had. There were some concerns going in that this space was actually smaller than the space that they had before, but because of the way it's laid out and because of the efficiencies that our design team found, it actually works. Now that it's in play, actually works better. We stayed right on our timeline, maybe a little bit behind due to a couple delays in some equipment, but we got it up and running in January, and we had our substantial completion in February. I'll just kind of give a little bit of a high level on the owner costs, because that does seem a little high for this project. So the bulk of that is related to, there was $37,000 for Excel to relocate and add a meter for that, so we can meter this separately, so it can fall under a separate cost, under a different cost umbrella. And then as well as furniture was another big piece, and then just some additional equipment for the kitchen because of the new setup. Their current equipment, like carts, didn't work. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions you have about that, but that's the 40,000-foot overview.
Questions from board members on the central kitchen project? Amber?
This probably bleeds into our general meeting with future requests for consideration, but as I'm seeing all of this and just seeing the pictures and it come to fruition, I'm curious at some point if we can have a discussion about child nutrition. I don't know the last time we've had the child nutrition director come, and I think nutrition is such an important piece to our day-to-day and wanting to make sure our kids are eating good, healthy foods. And I have no idea about supply chain management and how it relates to food products and things like that. But I see what my kids eat at school, and I think with this comes maybe a look at improving some of those things. And so I just am curious about that, and maybe how we're able to expand some of our different food offerings. Not that we're making everything in hand, but it seems like we have more equipment and more space, maybe not as much staff, but could be something that the board helps with. I don't know, but curious maybe on your thoughts right now on if there's opportunity with a new space and new equipment to do different things.
I can't really speak to that, as it's not really my expertise. I said we worked with the kitchen for the design, the kitchen team for the design and the construction, and made sure they had what they need. But as far as my expertise goes around food, I have very little. So I'll respectfully decline to answer that question.
Other questions? Jay, did you have one?
Yeah, but mine aren't as smart. That's a good question. I actually think that owner cost is good. It's coupled from not even 3% of the total spent. And I assume there was kitchen equipment in there somewhere?
There was a little equipment. We actually found an efficiency that prevented us from actually adding in some circuits. So by buying one small piece of equipment, we prevented 2 additional circuits from being added. So that was a cost save on our side. And one thing I forgot to mention as well is the replacement of the fire panel here at MSCC, which ties into that. That work has not been complete, but is included in that cost as it's encumbered. So that's going to be an upgrade for not only that facility, but this one as well.
And then the other comment is the design cost. That's really that's a bargain. So
Yeah, I agree.
all in all, this is a very well-managed project.
And if I may, one more thing too is just the design of not having to expand the footprint of Mark Sanford very much, reutilizing that warehouse component. Even as warehousing is changing across our district, we're turning a little bit more into that just-in-time receiving and shipping, so we can reduce the footprint, reuse the square footage. So, yeah, kudos all around on the project.
Any other questions on this particular project? Dave, any questions on the phone?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Just
Amber?
curious, how have deliveries been? I know we've had, we kind of had those new doors and stuff, and previous there wasn't semis coming right off of 47th onto that street, but have we managed that okay? I haven't heard any news stories that they've gotten stuck or anything.
I haven't heard any complaints as far as how the new system is being handled. I don't have any specific information on that.
Other questions? Okay, hearing none. Brandon?
On to the second project. The big one is related to the referendum question, was allocation of $55 million for a new Valley Middle School. The construction contracts. Now, this is one difference in titling. Before I said the actual numbers in, we're midway through this project, so this is contracted amount. And when you get into the soft costs, like owner costs, those are not yet complete. There's plenty of project yet to be worked through, so these are not final numbers. That's just the biggest thing I'd like to say, not final numbers. So the construction costs are reflective of a guaranteed maximum price of $44.65 million. The design costs are reflected here, $3.8 million. And the owner costs are at $1.7 million. And that's, again, a little bit of a projection of where we think that could end up, but plenty of things yet to happen. If you do total those things, that project, the bids came in really well. The project team actually went back because there was an effort to value engineer prior to the bids coming in and said, well, where could we add a few of those things back? And even with those items included, the project is sitting at, a projection of $50.2 million, which would put that whole project under budget quite well. Not as large of a percentage as the last one, but certainly the number is a little bit larger at $4.8 million. So plenty of project left to do there, but that entire project, I think, and Jonathan will articulate this, is really just hit a great stride, good weather, and they've stayed on top of that.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. This project is going very well. We're on time, under budget. I'd say that's the phrase we use. So at this point, we're doing a lot of masonry work on the outside, doing the metal panels on the outside, as well as having multiple levels of finishes on the inside. We have everything from concrete that was just poured last week to fully finished rooms. So as we progress through this, we're hopefully, once we get to a little more of a finished state, would like to invite board members to walk through this. But we're trending in a very good direction. We had a somewhat mild winter. I was very impressed, especially with the masons. We're able to work in some of that cold and snowy weather. And I would ask board members maybe to drive by next week. This week they're putting up metal panels, and then they're actually going to wash the brick. The brick looks fantastic. I was very, very happy with how that turned out. It looked much, much better than the mock-up, in my opinion. But as far as the budget goes, which is why we're here, I feel that we're on a good track with that. Owner costs will go up slightly. One thing we want to talk about is we're working through right now how tariffs are going to affect some of these things, specifically furniture. So I should have an answer on that probably by the end of this week, maybe early next week, as well as a couple other things we need to add in those owner costs. So we'll expect those owner costs to go up. But outside of that, I just want to kind of talk about where we are on contingencies. So this is not inclusive of contingencies. Just to explain, so contingencies are our extra just-in-case dollars within the project. So we have an owner contingency for us to make changes, which I brought to the board and the finance committee before. We've got contractor contingencies for them to address things that were maybe missed or things that they need to change a little bit. And then we have allowances, which are buckets of money where there's a significant amount of unknown. So if we think one of them is winter conditions, we think we're going to need X amount of dollars because winter is going to change how we do things. So what we're trending very well on those, and anything we don't spend out of that is going to be returned back to the project. I don't necessarily want to put a number on that, but we're ahead of the project, we'll say, in contingency expenditures. So we should expect a decent amount to be returned back to the fund after the project is complete, barring any large-scale changes.
Questions on this for Brandon or Jonathan? Dr. Lund?
Sorry, I'm having a senior moment. The demolition for the old valley and then the building of the new athletic fields, does it come out of this bucket, or is there a different bucket that it comes out of?
That is inclusive with the construction cost. There are some small things like athletic equipment that are under the owner cost umbrella, but largely as the project that is included with the construction cost.
Thank you. Thank you. Other questions or comments? Amber?
You talk about the potential legislation regarding the bathrooms. Curious about where we're at with that, how that might affect it, if the board needs to vote on changing anything.
I wouldn't say we need to vote on changing anything at this point. The big issue is 5 bathrooms in that facility are non-compliant with the proposed bill. We were holding off as long as we could, but the concrete just got poured at the largest of those bathrooms last week, which is the one outside of the gym. So essentially, these are like the single stall bathrooms. They're separated by gender, but then there's a common wash area where everyone comes out of there. Kids can be supervised. We wash the hands. The issue with that is, we talk about, well, why not just flip the sink to the inside? Well, now you flip the sink to the inside, we don't have the radius to be ADA compliant. So now we have to not only do that, but we have to move the entire wall, which includes plumbing, electrical, and everything that goes with that. So that is the one thing that could really, I'd say, derail the finances on this project. But I think even getting some clarity on some of the language in the bill would help. One big thing is, the proposed amendment that says that bathrooms in existence by July 1 would be exempt, and we just want some clarity on that, as well as some clarity on what would be the requirements of separation. Could we maybe spec a different lavatory, a different sink out there, and then put a wall in between? Is that acceptable? If they would still be in, say, an accessible common area? These are just some larger questions that we have. I would be happy to go further on that if anyone has any questions.
Anything further? Other questions from board members? Okay, seeing none. Brandon?
Yeah, and the last thing I would add there too is if you have opinions on that and you care to share them, it's still being heard at a legislative level. And there's a hearing earlier today. So no action, but conversation continues. For safety and security, the last component of the $79 million referendum was $18 million set aside for a number of projects across the district to really improve and enhance safety and security. Some of the mainstay components of this have been looking at those offices that have been located in the center of buildings and moving them more to the perimeter. So I have one picture here of a rendering, but hopefully we'll get you guys out to see one project that's recently completed, the first of these at Red River, and you can actually see it yourselves. But the project was set aside $18 million for this, and it kind of breaks down. This is contract amounts and estimates. In this case, it's a little bit different. I've put those soft costs together, design costs and owner costs, really because this project's unique. It's building over 3 separate years, and so we're at different phases of design, and it kind of muddies a little bit to compare apples to apples. I thought this would be a sufficient representation of where that's at. Construction costs related across all of those locations for this project, $15.7 million, a design cost of $2.4 million, coming to what is now projected at $18.4 million. So that's over budget at $400,000. Just as the same point was made on the last slide with Valley Middle School, as there are contingencies built into every one of these. And really, we're early in that process. I think, I suppose about half of the projects have now received a bid or through the majority of Tier 2, and there are 3 tiers. But there's still plenty of time here to work through that and see if those numbers don't come back.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. We'll just start out with Red River. Red River, we just had our first architectural punch list last week, so the finishes are coming up nicely with that, as well as a mechanical, electrical, plumbing punch list tomorrow. So we're really wrapping up that project from a construction standpoint. What we're waiting on currently is furniture. I've been waiting to get an update, but there's some, we got in ahead of tariffs on that, but there's a lot of chaos as a lot of that furniture comes from Canada, so they're just trying to deal with the large influx of orders and trying to get a better handle on what their logistical avenues are. For the rest of these projects, we look to we've got a number of start dates. We have Winship and Lewis and Clark are starting in April. They're going to start with the exterior work. Lewis and Clark, as you can see, there's that addition on the outside. On the west side, we will be disrupting that drop-off lane, and the building admin are aware. We've been planning with them, and just as a comment, for every one of these projects, we are developing a contingency plan for if the project runs over. So we are working, none of these are going to be as disruptive as, oh, we can't have students in the building, but we're working with building admin to say, hey, if you can't get into this room, how are we going to adjust in the interim? So back to Lewis and Clark, that will receive a small addition on the outside, which will be the vestibule going into an office. Winship will be similar. I guess that would be the southwest side, kind of. There'll be an addition there that will be the reception area as well as a vestibule. And Schrader will be moving the office to the outside on the east side. It was what the art room is now. And there's a tech ed room there as well that will be repurposed as the office. We'll be moving that tech ed room over next to the other tech ed room, which is now the staff lounge. The staff lounge will move to another space, and the art room will move to the former office. So that one's probably the most complicated, has the most pieces going on. Kelly Lake A are very similar. We're essentially just moving the offices from the center to that exterior point. So now we have a vestibule. So as those of you, I'm sure all of you have been there, you have to walk in to the building and then kind of walk to the center of the building to get to the office. So then we're just moving those spaces to the exterior. In Kelly's instance, it's the counselor's office in one classroom will become the office, and the office will become the counselor's and a conference room, and that classroom will be repurposed in that as well. Lake A is similar. It will be their speech and counselor space will be the office, and then the office will become the nurse, social worker, and sped space. I think I covered all. Oh, Wilder, we don't have a start date yet for. We're thinking maybe midsummer. That one's going to be an addition on the south side. So that one will be, the idea will be to build that addition, do the outside work, get it dried in before winter, and then do some of that finish work throughout the winter to be open for the following year. And just to talk kind of the budget number, so we're at 404,655, quote unquote, over budget. So there are the contingencies, and also I just want to note that some of the tier 3 numbers are very conservative numbers, and I don't expect to see an issue pulling those numbers down into budget. So any questions?
Questions or comments from board members? Dr. Lund?
So anticipated completion dates for all of them except Wilder is before school starts?
Correct.
Thank you.
Other board member questions or comments? Joel?
Just the two numbers up there don't add up to 18,404. Are those numbers right? Hopefully the total is wrong.
No, that total is absolutely right. Sorry about that. It would have been in the design and owner costs because of, like I said, some of those haven't even been designed out, but that's just a mistake on my part. So if I can circle back to you, it'll add up to 18.404 guaranteed.
Okay.
Other questions, comments from board members? Dave, on the phone, anything?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Hearing none. Brandon?
Thank you. And then Career Impact Academy, before we talk about the building fund itself. So in this project, at the point of guaranteed maximum price, at the time when it was accepted, the total budget added up to 31.26 million. So that, the original project would have been even probably prior to my time. It was a little bit lower of a number, and then there was some growth in inflationary costs. But by the point that the contract was accepted, the guaranteed maximum price was 26.96 as listed there. The design costs are contracted at that amount not to exceed 1.686. And then there's still the owner costs, which there's still movement in. And luckily with this project, with a lot of great community partners, Eric's hard work here is that we're working hard to even keep that number down. So we've leveraged a couple of different grants to really pay for some of the CTE equipment within the building. And even the furniture bids themselves, thanks to Jonathan's work and taking all of the projects we've discussed, and, well, not all of them, I guess, Valley Middle School and the Career Impact Academy, and bidding them at the same time, trying to leverage that scale of economy, so to speak, and getting the prices in to keep this number down. Just continually being creative to keep those numbers down a little bit. So where we're expecting to end up here is just under $31 million on this project. And again, the project has been built primarily out of the building fund. And so as those overages came over, we've made those known that there was a gap in the project budget. That was brought up to the state legislature, and as much as that conversation continues, what we've done here is put the building fund in a position to handle all of that. So it's with this full budget here that's been on the pro forma of the building fund from every time we've talked about it, and so we have a plan to absolutely get this building completed on time and ready for the fall. I have Jonathan here, and then, of course, I'll just say, too, if Eric Ripley wants to add anything after Jonathan's conversation, of course.
Yeah, construction's going well. We don't anticipate any delays at this point for the May 1 substantial completion. We have a punch list tomorrow for the top floor, so that will be nearly completely finished with a couple things to wrap up after that. Hopefully, quickly to follow will be the lower level punch list. We have training starting April 7th on all of the systems, so they're really starting to get ready to hand us the building. This project has gone well. We had a good start in the fall last year where we were able to get a little bit further than expected. And I'm sure all of you saw that, it went up very quickly, especially with these metal panel exterior. We went from nothing there to a building in a very short order of time. Just referencing the budgets, I just want to talk again about the owner costs, just to remind the board of the $1.9 million that was approved in owner costs. We are working to keep those down as much as possible. So the good news is on the furniture, just to talk about that piece, we did get in front of tariffs on that one. That was approved $750,000, and we came in at just over $686,000. So there was a savings there. So we're thankful for you allowing us to make that move quickly. Hopefully there are some other similar ways we can press down on that and to really pull this budget within where we would like it to be. I'll stand for any questions.
Eric, anything from you?
Well, I appreciate always the opportunity to talk about the Career Impact Academy, right? It's been a project that's been part of really this community for a number of years, but it is exciting to see as we talk about, milestones in the project. Another one is the punch list on second floor. I would just like to extend an invite to the board, the facilities committee. I think, as you've had an opportunity to tour some of the other facility projects that the district has undertaken, I think this is one that you'll be proud also to have an opportunity to walk through, and whenever it suits the schedule, we'd be happy to welcome you. We've been fortunate to do that with some industry partners. We've done that with our surrounding schools, our setting schools, administrators and staff, and so feedback so far has been extremely excited. The group that we have not been able to get into this building yet, just because it's a construction project, are students. Exactly right. And so to me, when people ask, what are you most excited about? It's seeing the students in this building. And we're excited to do that sooner rather than later at this point. So thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments from board members? Jay?
Jonathan, you mentioned the budget you want to get to. Is that the 31,260, 856? Is that our cap?
The current budget is that 39,993,333. That's our total right now. And really, the budget at the top, is we're not concerned about hitting that piece, but we're just looking to press down wherever we can, because we know this has been a drawn-out project and costs have inflated. So we're just looking to find savings wherever we can. Just as a reminder, some of these funds are coming out of the building fund, which also acts as our capital maintenance fund. So trying to find any savings there is monies we can use then for future capital maintenance.
Other questions? Dr. Lund?
I know we've been pushing the legislature for extra dollars, and I think I saw in the newspaper recently, we're looking at contracts with other school districts, which I assume there's some financial component to that. How about donations? Are we still actively trying to get more donors, people interested, industries interested, or things like that? I'm just curious, because I know not only is it the initial building, but then it's all the money to keep it up the next 30 years as well.
Yeah, Dr. One, it's a great question. Certainly, there's two requests currently pending at the state legislative level. One would be continued capital project funds, again, more construction costs, and then also, but operational costs. Again, one of the longstanding items with the state level has been ongoing operational support for CT programs, but there needs to be enough dollars to handle the increase in programs across the state. And so both those asks are on the table. There's more support at the state level right now for the ongoing operational costs than there is to necessarily add dollars on the capital project side. But that conversation, we haven't given up on that. Still continuing to work with our GF legislative team to be able to continue to advocate for that, because it certainly is a need. In terms of seeking additional donations, that's ongoing. Tomorrow, I actually am happy to accept a donation from the Grand Forks Builders and Traders Exchange, who has stepped forward to provide a $25,000 contribution to this project. And so those conversations are ongoing, maybe not to the level of ferocity as the original 72-day campaign was, and at the same time, being mindful of right now, our list is at 90. We have 90-plus industry partners that have stepped forward. I think went into that first campaign with roughly 70. So in that span, we've added. But, there's only so many rocks to look under at the same time. So I think certainly we continue to do that. My appreciation to Brandon, who has continued to work on alternate revenue options, things like new market tax credits, which has been a great investment of time and work. And then, really kudos to Jonathan, who's been really intimately involved in this project all along, again, with the lens of how can we push those existing costs down to save on the building fund as he's articulated.
The questions, Dr. One.
Just a quick follow-up. How about our trying to get other school districts involved with this, with students? And I'm thinking not even just in this region, but, remotely or things like that. A student from Bowman, North Dakota is taking a remote class or something. I know you guys are working on that. Maybe give us a quick update.
No, our surrounding schools are certainly excited to be working and sending students. There was a nice article just was in the paper referencing Hillsborough and Central Valley, and so you're exactly correct. The idea would be every one of those districts participating provides some efficiencies both in the building. I think from my side it also provides access to those students to high quality CTs. So those conversations are continuing as well. We will deliver some online coursework. Maybe we'll see what the capacity is to be able to expand that beyond our own region. We've got to make sure that we have staffing to be able to do that. Generally, it comes from another district that can't be served by their local CT center that then comes to us. And so there's a little bit of a pecking order to reach to another school district.
Thank you. Bill?
Yeah, Eric, are you planning a donor wall within this building to recognize the people who have given?
Yeah, we are, and so it's really symbolic in the way it's designed. I wish I had a rendering. I can certainly share that out, but it's imagine Career Impact Academy with the word impact made up of individual circles, and so from a distance, collectively it just says the word impact, but as you step closer, each of those individual circles is made up of the names of the industry partners, and so the concept would be individually all those donations were important, but it took collectively the community to come together leaning in to make this project occur.
And then are you planning, if you have time before school, to get an open house for students to come and look?
Yeah, well, substantial completion is in May, which that's exciting because does that provide an opportunity to do something? I think when we look at open house, we really think, the furniture is scheduled to come in the late part of July. I think more of an open house in concert with the start of a new school year makes more sense than doing an open house to an empty building, let's say in May. So I think we'll do like a ribbon cutting open house celebration more in August. But that would be a great time to have not only for our internal, but our external stakeholder community members to come in and see the facility.
Thank you. Jay?
What's the status of Career Drive? Is the city got that thing shaped up and is it ready to go?
Yeah, they plan on doing that this summer. We're still working through a couple things on the approach and the entrance on our side, but that is planned for this summer to be started and completed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments from board members? Okay, thank you, Eric. Back to Brandon.
Okay, just kind of putting this back to here, kind of anchoring this around the building fund itself. So that's, of the other projects, just to be clear, the referendum dollars are all paid out of a different fund. This fund here really led the construction of the entire project around the Career Impact Academy. There were also other things happening out of that building fund. A big project here that really just wrapped up was the Guaranteed Energy Savings Project, which added some air conditioning throughout the schools. It also added a ton of efficiency around some old boilers, envelopes of buildings, et cetera. That just wrapped up for $17 million. Ben Franklin remodel, that was in part paid for by the building fund, also with some of the remaining ESSER dollars that went through and did a complete HVAC remodel throughout Ben Franklin. We were also able to use the building fund for a couple roofing projects, including Ben Franklin, and I have Red River and Phoenix there articulated as well. And then lastly, another one was that wind chip envelope project that really dressed up and insulated, improved that entire envelope of wind chip. Where we're at now is the current project set for this summer. Pretty busy with everything, actually. We just articulated all those safety and security projects. This building fund is going to take a little bit of a rest here for the moment. It's going to address a failed air handling unit at Kelly. And then also, this is the fund that was planned to really recommission the Grand Forks Central Pool and get that up and running. What that does to the fund, and this is also the fund that where the fraud had impacted. So that money had gone out of $2.2 million, and then the work to bring back the majority of that with a deficit of just over $800,000 impacts this fund. So this seems more dramatic. I didn't mean to lead with that fraud as much as that. The big drop here has little to do with that. That's just a function of when you bond money for a project and then you spend it down. So that's the big difference. If you consider $800,000, it would bring that second bar for fiscal year 25. This is a year-end fund balance, so that's the balance as of July 1. Without that fraud situation, that second bar of FY 25 would be a little bit higher. It'd be close to the second mark here of $2 million instead of where it's at $1.2 million. The following fiscal year, 26, will still have some of the final costs associated with the Career Impact Academy before it really gets its legs back under itself here at fiscal year 27. And then I make a note that by the August of 2028, that's within fiscal year 29, but August of 2028 is where we have some of our current debt service associated with that. There's a couple of bonds sold in 2010 that'll retire. And so that'll be an annual $1.3 million you get to keep each year from that point forward. And there's other debt that could retire. What I did mean to include was a picture of some of the historical with this fund. From fiscal year 26 to fiscal year 2019, this fund sat negative, just about $1.8 million, before it rose above the positive sign where it got closer to $2 million, and then came some of these recent projects. So my point is the fund is a capital fund. It's meant to be used for particular projects and on top of your maintenance. If you looked around the state, you'd find varying balances. There's not great guidelines to this and where it should be, and that's why the Finance Committee had started the conversation related to the guardrails on the building fund. Those conversations started a little while ago here with the promise that they'd come back to the Finance Committee by the end of the year, and then eventually to the board for awareness, starting the next fiscal year, July 1, with some guardrails on that fund. So this is the picture of what's next, is putting into context some of the priorities as Jonathan sees those across the district as soon as April 16th at the Finance Committee, and then coming back to the Finance Committee before the summer let out in May to talk about those guardrails, make a recommendation on those guardrails so they're in place before the summer busy work really begins, and we have those for the next fiscal year. What that lines up nicely for, with those guardrails in mind, is renewing our long-term facilities plan in the fall. So after the summer projects, after we all get settled back in, really Jonathan helping lead us through how do we want to prioritize that work. I think there's been a lot of big questions in other conversations that not this body as a committee, but the board has talked about, and we're hoping to help put all that into context with these coming conversations. That's our presentation. I didn't mean to go past this if you want to talk about this, but I just wanted to lead into what's next.
Any questions or comments for Brandon or Jonathan? Jay?
And we don't yet have a real strong concept of possible expenditures in 26 and 27 yet, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It's very fair. What we know for certain is anything we've committed to, those expenditures, including the debt service on that fund, absolutely to the penny. There are no projects that have been decided on, and so there's no project costs in there. So, fiscal year 27, you can easily say if we're going to spend $2 million on a project, that would cut that last orange bar in half in a hurry.
So it's not that nothing will get done, it's not knowing what will get done, so we can't project cash balances accurately yet.
Precisely. I'm not making assumptions about those projects. We want to have the projects conversation. And in fact, if you were to ask me, I'd say we wouldn't want to take a number of years off. We want to be strategic about what's being done there. So we keep in mind the health of the fund or the guardrails, as well as keeping in mind the health of the buildings and not deferring maintenance.
Thank you.
And I'll just add on to that, just along with laying out those guardrails where we feel they should be to the finance committee and talking through their feedback on that. We plan on coming saying, hey, this is our balance today. This is our goal to get to that balance. Obviously we can't just shut off projects until we hit that balance, but we will come with a goal on how we are going to get to that balance.
Thank you. Dr. Lund?
I just want to make a comment. Jonathan know a lot better than the rest of us, but we also realize that we have a lot of buildings that are relatively old, and we may not be done with boilers failing and roofs leaking and windows leaking, and there are going to be costs. So I think we have to be diligent and careful about how we spend our money in the future, because there's going to be those ongoing costs, just like there are for all of our homes as well.
Yes. Any other comments or questions? Amber?
Can you sneak forward a slide real quick? More of a procedural question. I think it's appropriate that the Finance Committee start the conversations about building fund and guardrails. Is there a reason why the discussion of upcoming project priorities isn't a finance and facilities meeting together? It's probably more of a chicken or the egg conversation, but I would imagine, the committee of the whole will want to talk about what those project priorities are to then help inform those guardrails, rather than just the members of the finance committee discussing project priorities and then it coming here. I'm more so I want to avoid kind of the back and forth. I wonder if it would be important to have that first meeting as a dual one, and then the finance committee takes that conversation to build the guardrails.
Thank you.
It's an interesting question. I leave it to your direction. We started the Facilities Committee of the Whole not that long ago, relatively new, and we even anticipating projects, and then we also gave the Finance Committee a role in approving change orders, knowing there'd be these projects coming. And so now we've done this for a little while, and definitely open to what you think works best and where the appropriate committee is, because there's a lot of interplay between those committees. So if you're thinking, we wanted to have the conversation before things got too busy with the summer, whereas the Facilities Committee of the Whole meets every other month. And so we wanted to make sure we met the goal of the guardrails and that whole conversation prior to that. So if you're suggesting April 16th, getting everyone together?
I mean, I would leave that to board leadership and the superintendent. I would have maybe put that project priorities on the agenda for this time, just to help inform that. I'll give you an example. Schrader with the HVAC system. That's one of the only remaining schools that doesn't have a full building of HVAC. And I know that that's on Jonathan's radar. I know it's on the superintendent's radar. But as we're talking about things, you know, if we're trying to fit priorities in a defined budget rather than say, here's the facility needs, let's talk about these. These are what the facility conversations or directions want the district to go, then it's kind of easier, in my opinion, to dwindle down. I also would look to the finance committee in maybe giving some advisement on what do we do with the excess funds for Valley and the central kitchen. I know we've talked about kind of, you know, potentially what we do. I don't have the language in front of me, but I think there could potentially be language to look at. Is there excess funds that we could use in an appropriate way? Do we give it back to the taxpayers? You know, do we not use any of it? So I would be interested in if the finance committee is looking at some of those dollars of just having a report or some sort of option for direction. You know, here's A, B, and C. Just because you have extra funds doesn't mean you need to spend it, but that's why I think maybe the dual conversation is important, because we do have facilities needs that I wonder if other committee members have questions about. So just thinking out loud at this point.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions, comments from board members? Dr. Lund?
I wonder, the discussion about if we have money left over after those projects, it's too early to know that, I think. I think that's later in the year, but I'd look at these two gentlemen and say, I mean, are we going to have more firmed up? We are with the central kitchen, but I'm not sure Valley, we're going to have really firm numbers yet about that, and that's might be too early of a conversation for that.
Yeah, I believe it is a little too early for that conversation. You know, we will have some firming of numbers on Valley next December, but I just want to remind the board that while the building is complete, that project will not be complete till the following August. We still have to tear down a building, build parking lots, and return the space to Greenfield.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions or comments from board members? Dave, any questions or comments on the phone?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Thank you. Any further, do you have anything else, Brandon?
Thank you for
Or
your
Jonathan?
time.
Okay. Jonathan, anything further? Okay, thank you. This being just an item for discussion, no action needed. The next meeting, or the next item on the agenda is just to state the next meeting date is currently scheduled for May 26th.